Hi, it's Dwyer. GamblersAdvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let me also say, too, that if you're into fantasy sports, the promo code to save money on FanDuel.com is Dwyer777 for new accounts. Well, I'm impressed. I'm very impressed by the candor of Tyson Fury's corner, which includes family members who obviously care about him, about the mental health challenges Tyson faces that are preventing the rematch with Vladimir Klitschko. Now, I know the press is reporting this as depression, right? If you've known someone or been close to someone with bipolar disorder, right, manic depression, it's my belief, and I'm not a medical doctor, that that's what Tyson Fury suffers from. Let me point out that Fury for years has been openly talking about how some days he wakes up and he just wants to drive his car into a wall to end it all. Someone suffering from bipolar disorder feels like they're on top of the world one day. They feel that they're bulletproof. Then, in a matter of hours, they could feel like it's just not worth it. That life itself is pointless. What I want people to do is consider the fact that anyone, really, could be afflicted with depression or bipolar disorder. Understand, a lot of the people you know, right, in entertainment or in the world of boxing or in the world of athletics, actually suffer from some form of depression. I'm going to name someone who's gone public, who's actually said, look, I have suffered from depression in the past. I've had multiple episodes of depression where I've questioned myself, or I've questioned whether to go forward. And yet this guy seems to have it all. Right? He's, according to some reports, the highest paid actor in Hollywood. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who people may know, used to play football, right? In fact, he was such a prize recruit, he was recruited for and played for the University of Miami when the Hurricanes were the big college team, right? Well, The Rock talks about, and this is a guy who, physically imposing, professionally successful, right? The Rock talks about how this journey takes him down some dark streets. Well, let's just focus on the world of boxing. I hope people understand that in boxing, right, Tyson Fury's not alone today in terms of suffering from depression. If you track the interviews boxers give, right, and if you read between the lines, you'll find out that several high-placed boxers today suffer from depression, have had moments where, even though they're on top of the world, and in Fury's case, let's be clear here, he's an unbeaten heavyweight champion. In my opinion, he is the best fighter in the division, right? I hope I've been unambiguous in expressing that in past videos, right? I believe he is the best. I picked him over Klitschko the first time. I was picking him over Klitschko now, right? Just understand that he's not alone in boxing in being at the top of the mountain, but yet on an off day, emotionally, will want to give it up. I'm not going to name names, but there are interviews here of guys with belts, right? Here being online, of guys with belts who talk about wanting to give up their boxing career, right? These are guys at the top of the sport. These aren't guys struggling for their next meal. These are guys who, according to traditional benchmarks, are successful. Who, of course, have said, look, I was wondering if it was worth it. I thought about quitting. Some of these guys, suffered their first loss or felt slighted in some way from a newspaper article, an interviewer's question, whatever the case may be, right? A promoter's low bid. And a lot of these guys will openly say, look, I question whether I even wanted to continue. Now, I'm just going to name some people who have openly talked about depression, right? In fact, I'll just name one other guy who was at one point heavyweight champion, Frank Bruno. Understand, by the way, that's how pervasive depression is, right? Tyson Fury is not even the first heavyweight champion to suffer from depression. Frank Bruno suffered from depression, right? Several other champs going back in history have acted at times in ways that I believe have us realizing that something wasn't quite right. Again, I'm not going to name names. I do believe in health privacy. It's a little bit different when a Dwayne Johnson and a Frank Bruno want to share their journey with us. But let me just say, depression is much more commonplace than you and I want to believe, right? When someone is having questions about their self-worth, right? There's a physical side. When someone is lacking dopamine production in the brain and just feels like it's not worth it, when they're doubting themselves, then quite frankly, on those days, it's going to be impossible for that person to defend the heavyweight title, right? I once saw a fight, I'm not going to name names, but old-timers know the fight I'm talking about. It was a rematch between a guy who won the heavyweight title and the champion who is a Hall of Famer, who lost the title to him, right? And the guy who won the first fight literally seemed to have an emotional breakdown in the ring. He refused to throw punches. If you know the fight I'm talking about, go ahead and leave it in the comment section to this video. He started crying during the fight. Now, what I want people to understand is that these situations can be treated with medication, right? The fighter I'm talking about actually went on to have a long career, right? A very long career. He actually went on to win other big fights. What boxing has to do is to find a way to distinguish between performance-enhancing drugs and drugs that are actually treating legitimate medical conditions. Let me say, too, that just in life, you'll find out that a Super Bowl winning quarterback, multiple Super Bowl winning quarterback, an NFL rushing leader, right? A former president of the United States. Research Abraham Lincoln, who suffered from melancholia, right? Many people believe that Lincoln is the best president in the United States' history, right? Many people have suffered from depression. Also understand, bipolar disorder in particular is a double-edged sword, right? one of the things that makes a fighter great could well be his bipolar disorder. When you're on top of the world, right? When you are alive, many times that's when you're at peak performance. That's when you're taking your craft boldly in directions most don't. Now you look at Tyson Fury, and I've said this many times here online, and he's a much more advanced fighter than Vladimir Klitschko. Right? Understand, when Tyson Fury goes southpaw, he can stay southpaw. Right? He can literally fight the entire fight in a non-dominant stance. Right? He's a righty fighting lefty. And he can still throw combinations. Right? Understand, a big guy like Tyson Fury with a greater than 70% KO ratio would often be unchallenged on the way up. Right? Many fighters would say, hey, I'm bigger than most physically. I have a punch. Right? Don't believe me? Look at his KO percentage. Right? I have a punch. I'm a big burly guy. But yet Tyson Fury insisted on learning how to move around the ring. There are fights where Tyson Fury's on his back foot against guys he could easily be on his front foot against. Right? Just expanding his boxing vocabulary, his skill set. Right? Now understand, we can criticize mental health conditions, but sometimes the mental health condition will give you an energy level and an attention to detail that allows you to be great. That's why so many people with bipolar disorder have problems taking their medication. Because the medication takes the top off, right? It flattens the mood. It removes the extremes. And sometimes it's the very extremes that make life so exciting. So it's not uncommon for you to deal with someone with bipolar disorder, right? Who, will tell you, I didn't like my medication. My medication being on medication was worse than being off the medication, right? The problem, though, is when you're off the medication and you have blue moods, you could be the best athlete out there, the highest paid actor out there, and you're going to feel worthless. Right? Now, I've put in my comment section here online an interview with Peter Fury. Right? You might as well hear from someone in Tyson Fury's camp about the real reasons why the Vladimir Klitschko fight's not happening. It's done by an excellent interviewer who's part of IFL, a YouTube posting group that you need to know about. Right? He gets Peter Fury to open up. And Peter Fury basically talks about how they had a choice. Now keep in mind, this is Fury's corner. They sensed he wasn't mentally ready. That he was questioning the very value of having the heavyweight title. Think about that. There are many young boys in hundreds of countries right now dreaming of being heavyweight champion. And yet here was an unbeaten heavyweight champion who earned it. He wasn't handed anything by a sanctioning body. Rather, he jumped in the ring with a multi-year heavyweight champion, and he beat him decisively. Right? Here was Tyson Fury, ready to walk away from his crown. Right? So Fury talks about how the corner decided, right, with Fury, of course, that they weren't going to have Fury enter the ring. right? If it was just about the money, they could have had him enter the ring. They would have made millions. But it's about more than that. It's about a family member. It's about that family member's well-being, right? Not just financially, but mentally, physically, spiritually, right? So the corner made a decision not to have this fight go forward at this time. It's going to take some time. Mental injuries take a while to heal. It's going to take some time for Tyson Fury, in a sport as demanding as boxing, in a division as unforgiving as the heavyweight division, right? If you don't have your head on right, you're in against a world-class opponent who's literally trying to knock you out, right? Guys like, pick the guy at Tyson Fury's level, Vladimir Klitschko, other champions, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, they have punches. All of the men I've just named have, with their hands, knocked other men unconscious, right? You can't participate in this arena while you're having a depressive episode. So, I wish Tyson Fury the absolute best. My own prediction is that he's going to get stripped of the title, but that the title's really secondary here, right? I believe he's going to get his health back. What often happens in situations like this is, after some time away from the ring, the fighter rediscovers his love of his craft, right? I think Tyson Fury is going to be a ghost that haunts the heavyweight division, right? I believe, even though, and this is boxing with a lot of trash talk, even though other fighters diss him and say, oh, Tyson Fury, blah, 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 right? People talk. People want to sell tickets. People want to, entertain interviewers, right? People want to lift their own reputations, their own images, their own public personas of fearlessness. Okay, fine. I get all that. But I believe these guys know that there are very few people in the entire sport with this young man's skill set, right? He's back foot against Kevin Johnson. He has his back up against the ropes for an extended period of time against Derek Chisora. He's on his front foot smothering Steve Cunningham. He has an excellent jab with both hands. If you didn't know, and you saw him standing southpaw flashing a right jab, you would think he was southpaw, right? As I've said, he has an over 70% KO ratio, right? His road to the heavyweight title didn't have him beating Charles Martin. It had him beating Vladimir Klitschko, right? He's going to be back. In my opinion, he is going to be back big. But he needs to take care of himself, right? He needs to get by this blue period so he could get back on the road to athletic dominance. And if he decides to take another path, if he decides to walk away from the sport right here, right, we should still applaud him as a guy who did it his way, a guy who left the sport unbeaten after having beaten Vladimir Klitschko, right? So, while respecting everyone's medical privacy, let me just say, he's not the only one in boxing who suffers from depression. He's not the only one in boxing who has doubted himself. I know critics and cynics are going to say, hey, This guy is just coming up with a reason to avoid a rematch against Vladimir Klitschko. Understand, he's already beaten Vladimir Klitschko. Not by flash knockdown, but by methodical 12-round destruction. There's a moment in the first fight where he has both hands behind his back. You know what they say, the hard part with success is what you do with your life after you've achieved it. Right? I'm sure Tyson Fury, one of his big goals in life was to be heavyweight champ. What do you do after you've risen to the top? Let me say this too. There's a media jungle out there. The kitchen is very hot for public figures, isn't it? Right? In many countries you have even, higher standards legally for proving defamation if you're a public figure. So, Tyson Fury in the spotlight, right, made some mistakes. He's not the only one in boxing. Look at the mistakes made by Manny Pacquiao in the spotlight. Right? He made some mistakes. People came down on him for some of his views. Right? Then, of course, there were questions, and I believe this hurt him deeply. There were questions about whether or not he had taken performance-enhancing drugs in the past. Right? I'm just telling you, as you know, that the PED world is murky to the point where many people who haven't done anything wrong get accused of doing things wrong. Right? So, at this point, Fury has decided not to go forward with his fight against Vladimir Klitschko. Right? According to reports, Anthony Joshua now wants to fight Vladimir Klitschko. Let's just call that what it is. The end of Joshua's reign as heavyweight champion. Right? Vladimir Klitschko will go on. Vladimir Klitschko will meet other challenges. But I'm sure Vladimir Klitschko knows that the biggest challenge out there for him in the world of boxing is the rematch against Tyson Fury. Right? I think Fury is going to have other opportunities. I do think, though, my prediction here is that Fury gets stripped by multiple sanctioning bodies. Right? Maybe one will make him a champion in recess, or will reach some deal with him where he remains the mandatory contender. Right? But I do think that these boxing sanctioning bodies understand that they have to have titles that people actually compete to get, right, at least once a year. And I suspect Fury is not going to be available to fight for the rest of this year. If you hear that a fight is set for, let's say, November or December, I would view that with skepticism. Right? Mental health concerns are real. They take time to recover. Right? A person can look like they're fine and have demons. Motivational problems in training can cause big problems for fighters in the main event. Right? I hope Tyson Fury takes some time off. I hope it's at least 6 months. Right? Have your fights in the gym. Right? Rediscover your love of the sport away from the camera. Right? Don't get in the ring with Vladimir Klitschko within the next few weeks. Right? In my opinion, that would be too much, and I'm someone who believes that that Tyson Fury is the better fighter with more upside than Vladimir Klitschko. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.